Go get me some knowledge.
Quick backstory. Back when I was doing studio work for CBS Sports Network, you were calling games for CBS Sports Network, and you had a bunch of Wyoming football games, late night, Wyoming versus Boise, Wyoming versus Houston, whatever, right? Colorado State. And I remember talking to you down the line during our halftime breaks, trying to get a little nugget. Hey, what's going on? What do you see? And I remember telling you how unimpressed I was with Josh Allen. And I just didn't see it. I didn't believe it. I thought the guy was reckless. I thought he was random. I thought he was inaccurate. Sure, he had a strong arm, but everybody in the NFL has a strong arm. I'm here to tell you, like, I can't even tell you how wrong I was about this guy. What is it that you see in his transformation that is so impressive?
Well, listen, I was wrong as well. You see him at Wyoming and you see him play against Mountain West guys, and let's face it, it's the competition isn't there. You knew he was a freak of a nature, but he was a freestyling quarterback that just kind of showed up and flung the ball around. Sometimes it landed at his target, sometimes it didn't. And he'd take over late in games with quarterback sweep and power and all that good stuff. Um, didn't know if that would really translate because very few coaches can coach accuracy, right? And the finer details. Um, Fast forward, I got a chance to do several of his games his rookie season, and I came away kind of the same thing. He was inaccurate. He didn't really have a sense of what the defense was doing. He looked overwhelmed out there. And I thought to myself, I'm not sure that this is going to work out. A couple years later, the light bulb came on, and now you kind of look silly for having that take. So I was also completely wrong about Josh Allen.
Yeah, it's a great little mix of right system, right coaches surrounding him, influx of talent, and obviously got to give him credit for having the right attitude to take the coaching. And they had patience with him. They were willing to take the bumps, the bruises along the way to get to the guy that they have now.
Yeah, listen, I think not every coach is created equal when you talk about developing talent. Certainly, developing quarterback talent. It truly is an art. Um, but I'm going to say this: I've been part of this game for a long, long time, playing now, calling it. Get a chance to interview so many different types of guys. I coach high school football. This is what I see when I see Josh. There's so many guys that have the raw materials that they're uber talented with size, speed, all these tremendous athletic gifts. Most of these guys, their entire lives, have always been the best player when they walk on the field. And really, do they really have to work that hard? Because the game naturally comes easy. Now, for Josh, that's where I think he's a little bit unique. And so he has actually put in the work. And this is what I talked to him today in our meetings. And I talked to his coaches, that it just seems like every weakness that he has had, any shortcoming that he's had, when he attacks it in the off season, he fixes it, right? It's pretty unbelievable. You got to work on his accuracy. Well, he comes back and now has accuracy. He has touch. Last year, the story was giveaways and interceptions. Well, you got to really work that and hammer that. Well, what did he do? He came back this year and he's taking care of it. And so he just has this humility to just attack whatever's thrown at him. And I think it's the willingness to put in the work for these talented guys when everything has come easy in their lives. Are you really going to struggle and go through the hard stuff that doesn't come easy to you? And I think that's what makes him special.
Yeah, it's so funny how the tables have turned on the Patriots as the Buffalo Bills head down to Foxborough. The last game of the season for the Patriots, thank God. There was a time when the Buffalo Bills, it was almost like foregone conclusion that even if they had a good team, they were going to find a way to lose either in Foxborough or in Buffalo. It's completely changed now.
It has. Look, we just talk about Josh Allen doing the little things. New England had a quarterback that wasn't as naturally gifted as Josh Allen, but certainly his work ethic and his sacrifice and his attention to detail is legendary, right? To me, that's what really makes these guys who they are. And so, yeah, the Patriots now are they've gone through a period where they know what it's like to be one of the have-nots in the NFL. But having said that, I look at Drake May and I think,
Good transition, Adam.
yeah, I think that could be changing because I do think that he has so many of the things that they're looking for, and I do think New England did find their quarterback.
Well, what stands out to you though? Because I know you watched all the games, and you definitely watched the last game they played up in Buffalo where they lost 24-21, and he threw it for 261 yards. And I think they came pretty close to catching Buffalo sleeping, but Buffalo survived.
Yeah.
What do you see in Drake May?
Well, I've had a chance to do now, this will be my third, I don't know, maybe my fourth. They all run together, a New England game. I had the Jets game where he got his start, but he got bounced out of that game with the concussion. Um, what I see from him, I just see a guy that just processes very fast. Even thrown into the fire there with an offensive line that is as shaky as it gets, just really understanding what defenses are doing at a very early age, being able to have answers, having great poise, decision making, knowing when to scramble, maybe not knowing exactly how to protect himself yet, but those things will come. But I just think a quarterback that has high football intelligence matched with really nice physical gifts that really understands the game of football at a high level at an early age. I think Drake May is much farther along, even with this supporting cast in his rookie season than Allen was, certainly in his first year or his second year, quite honestly.
Yeah. So how fair is it to judge his offensive coordinator, Alex Van Pelt? Because I know you're not up here, you're not watching all the local news, but there's a lot of blame pie going on up here in Boston. And right now, the target is squarely on Alex Van Pelt. Is it fair to assess him this year with all the struggles they have personnel wise for the Patriots?
I don't believe it is. I mean, sometimes you get a sense, does a guy know what he's doing or not? I don't get that sense with Alex Van Pelt. I think he's a quality coach, a quality coordinator. Look, let's face it. I mean, it's funny. Everybody talks about the importance of what do you do with a young quarterback? You go out there and you get him a supporting cast, right? You got to go get the supporting cast in order for him to thrive. Well, let's face it, Drake May doesn't have that. The offensive line, how many, I don't know, is it possible to have one?
They lead the league with offensive line combinations. I'm almost positive.
Yeah. And so if like doing in this business, when we get ready to call a game and we do our research and you go down to this is the 12th offensive line combination this season, good chance it's not a good football team, right? Let's just say that's like the kiss of death. They probably outside of a Wenu and who knows what you have in Strange, but they have bottom of a roster guys playing the offensive line. You look at all the quick pressures, all the blown protections. And some of that's coaching, but let's face it, it's not a talented offensive line. Repeatedly throughout this year, when's the last time the Patriots had game-breaking wide receivers, right? That really, really dictate coverage and make plays. So I don't know if it's really fair to judge Alex Van Pelt. I think if you judge the performance of a rookie quarterback and that's your measuring stick, I think he's done an outstanding job because let's face it, Drake May is a talented player, but bad coaching can ruin talented players. Look at Sam Darnold, right?
Great.
So from that standpoint, I think I really do think he's done a really good job with Drake May.
So on the other side of the ball, though, the defense, I think the defensive side of the ball is probably the most curious position because I think most people assumed that side of the ball was going to be consistent and kind of take off from where they left off last year, right? Top 5 defense, good kind of disciplined team, and you retained basically both your coaches from last year. But that side of for me has been really disappointing. How do you see it?
I would agree. First and foremost, I think you understand the value in what Bill brought to the table as a defensive strategist. I don't believe. I mean, there could be one. It doesn't come to mind right now. I don't believe there is a coach in the NFL that can consistently get production out of not having elite talent, right? Not having. When's the last time they had an elite pass rusher? a double-digit guy, right? Usually to have an elite defense, you need to get somewhere combined 20 sacks from your edge rushers, right? So you're starting to see how important it was, Bill understanding how to maximize talent, how to understand what the team needs, what scheme they have to go with, how to cover up for shortcomings, how to get the best out of their players. Severely underrated. And I think this year, I would agree, the defense has been a disappointment. You see so many games where it just seems like they haven't quite made the adjustments. And you see, especially a good offense, really start to take advantage of them. And I would be very, very disappointed if I was a Patriots fan in this defense.
Yeah, it seems like any quality back, not high end back, quality back with a serviceable offensive line can get yards. I mean, just not easily, but man, you're an NFL back. Arm tackles aren't going to do it.
Yeah.
Angles aren't going to do it. It really is. That side of the ball really disappoints. But I tell you what, who stood out and has been since he came back from being injured last year was Christian Gonzalez. And I know the Pro Bowl voting was announced and he wasn't one of them. Maybe he'll be an alternate. What do you think of being a defensive guy, playing
Yeah.
safety, linebacker in college, weak side though, undersized weak side linebacker at Arizona State? We should get to that Sun Devil game too, by the way.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? He is, I mean, it looks like he may be a great one.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, let me back up first. One of the other parts of the defense that you just saw was they just didn't seem like they always knew where to line up and just being caught off guard and just communication at times was a big problem. Um, so I just think, from a secondary and a coverage standpoint, they've really struggled this year. I think Gonzalez is fantastic. I think that, you talk about, this is maybe getting to the weeds of defensive back play, but you talk about leverage. Uses his leverage as good as anybody in the NFL. If he's supposed to be outside leverage, he rarely gets beat outside. And you don't really see that very often. His ability to play sticky man out of press coverage against top wide receivers is rare. So I agree. I think Christian Gonzalez is an excellent, excellent corner. And look, there's some good corners out there. He's competing with guys with Pat Surtain and those guys for the Pro Bowl. It's hard to make a Pro Bowl if you're a bottom tier defense, even if you're a standout defensive player, unless you're a pass rusher that gets like 15 sacks or something like that. So really, to be a Pro Bowler on the defensive side of the ball, it's hard to get respect when you've been giving up a lot of yards as a defense. But I do agree. I think that's the one. If you want to talk about star power or a guy that could be a marquee player, I think he's been excellent this season, and he's one of the top man cornerbacks in the NFL.
Yeah, I know we're hitting all the big ticket items, but the last one, and you'll probably discuss this during the game, is head coach Gerard Mayo, first time head coach anywhere. How do you think he's doing so far?
Well, listen, I think one thing that's important when you do this job and you analyze football is always remember that you're not in the building, right? And so when you don't know, and you know this, Christian, when we're not part of the locker room and you don't understand what it's like in there, it's hard to just throw out your opinions from afar, right? I'm in Arizona and I'm sitting here saying this is what I think is happening. So that's always kind of a disclaimer. And you have to kind of rely on, I'm not one that really likes to try to get gossip, right? I'm more interested in the X's and O's. And so I'm not like trying to dig up dirt. You just go by what you see. I think anytime you have a first-time head coach and somebody that has limited experience, there's going to be growing pains, right? There's going to be a learning curve. Gerard Mayo, let's face it, is not going to be Bill Belichick in year one. I mean, and that's the standard. And I know Bill made some questionable decisions in his last few years, but let's face it, it's one of the greatest coaches of all time. You're following in his footsteps. So I do think you have to give him a little bit of grace from that standpoint. There is a learning curve. I don't know what it's like to play for him. I don't know what the players in that locker room feel about him. From the outside looking in, and I look at, if I just compare him to guys around the league, one thing that's really standing out to me this year, maybe more so than ever, is the new coaches or the young coaches that are having success. It's just the outward culture of the building that you see. I give Jim Harbaugh with the Chargers. Look at that culture. You look at their post game, they're building like you could tell his players love playing for him. Look at Kevin O'Connell, a young guy. You could tell his players love playing for him. Look at Dan Quinn in Washington. His players love playing for him, right? So there's a definite culture, and there's an excitement, and there's a belief that, hey, we can get this done. Now, I know it's tough. You've only won 3 games, so it's hard to have that culture, but like I haven't seen that, right? If I compare them to other, first year head coaches with new teams and trying to turn around the fortunes of an organization.
Yeah, you know what? It's the other part about this game, and I don't know how you guys are going to handle it at 1 o'clock on Sunday on CBS, is the Bills are playing for nothing. And the Patriots, I mean, can win by losing. If they lose, they guarantee themselves the #1 pick in the draft. And I always thought this was just a weird contradiction of emotions, if I could use that, because on one hand, like, yeah, that's your pride. And how are you going to tell a player not to try or to miss a tackle or to drop a pass? It just has to happen naturally, no matter how badly you want it. How do you think this game goes with that in mind?
Yeah, I hate this argument because it is counterintuitive. The fact that you're going to tank, that you're playing for draft position, as players, who cares, right? Like, as an organization, as a fan standpoint, listen, the #1 pick of the draft is valuable. So I get it. There's really no upside for winning this game if you're the Patriots. Now, players are going to go out there and they're going to play because they're playing for themselves and they're playing for a new contract or they're playing to stay in the NFL. But there's no doubt. I do think there is. Now, is there a difference in value from pick 5 or pick 6? I think that's, debatable. But #1 pick, that's valuable. Like, that's the #1 position when clearing waivers. You already have your quarterback. You have the ability to deal that and maybe get some other draft picks. So I do think that it is valuable. Now, I don't think you're going to outwardly tank, but you can call, an all-out blitz or man coverage situations on 3rd and 10, and maybe make it more difficult for your guys to maybe stop that play. So I do think there are ways, but there's no doubt the #1 pick is extremely valuable for the Patriots, even though I'm disgusted to say that. I mean, it's a fact of life.
Yeah. How do you feel about the whole win the last game, feel good about yourself going into the offseason, even though that for the Patriots, it would still only be 4 wins? Is there anything to that? Is there any carryover from winning the last regular season game, not a playoff game, a regular season game, and having some sort of momentum or goodwill equity to start the next season?
No.
Well, we're going to convince ourselves that we're that team. If I'm Gerard Mayo, that is what I'm saying. And if you guys are all going to be back, don't worry about it. Let's look at a win.
Yeah, well, then you know that your coach isn't being authentic, right? Listen, you know this. The #1 motivator for NFL players when you're out of the playoffs is to play as good as you can to secure your position for the next season, right? Because let's face it, teams don't usually like getting players from losing teams, right? So you like legitimately you're putting on film because there's a good chance the roster is going to turn over tremendously. The Patriots have a ton of cap space and, they have draft picks. The roster is going to turn over tremendously. And let's say this isn't an ultra talented roster. So this game matters to a lot of the guys that are playing in it. You're trying to put good tape. You're trying to show to other teams that, look, I could be, well, and even the Patriots, that I can be a solution because I want to play longer. I want to get paid. I'm trying to make money. So listen, it's hard. It's human nature to maybe not be totally motivated and enthusiastic about playing in this game. But that's where you have to be super mentally tough and you have to go out there and you have to play your best because, listen, it's hard to play in the NFL and it's even harder to last in the NFL. And the only way you can do it is to go out there and play your best and put out good tape.
Yeah, well, we'll try to bring the energy for you here in Foxborough. Games at 1 o'clock. Spiro D, Adam Archuleta, CBS. Wait, who's got sideline?
Aditi Kinkabwala.
Cool.
She is she's excellent. I mean, you talk about I don't really look at her as a sideline reporter. She's more of an NFL insider. Her knowledge of the game and her ability to get stories, she's exceptional.
CBS always does an excellent job. You guys have great people over there.
Go get me some knowledge.